wind clawed at the cabin walls, a sound like wolves tearing through pine. Elias Boone stirred in the dark, breath fogging in the cold air. The lantern's flame guttered low beside his bed. Then 3 sharp knocks. Not wind, not storm. A pause. Then one more. Softer. Desperate. He swung his legs off the cot, joints stiff, hand brushing the rifle, leaning by the door. The dog didn't bark. That unsettled him most. He lit the lantern again, flame trembling, and crossed the floorboards. Frost bit through his bare feet. When he opened the door, the world outside was a white howl. Snow swirling, the yard half erased. Then he saw it, a basket, woven, cracked, half buried. The cry came again, thin, human, alive. He stepped out into the storm. Snow lashed his face. The wind tore at his coat. He knelt, brushed away ice from the lid. Inside, beneath a faded quilt, something moved. A tiny hand, blue-veined and trembling. For a second, the cold wasn't outside anymore. It was inside him. His breath caught. His wife's voice echoed, "She'll have your eyes, Eli." The memory cut deep, sharp as sleet. He blinked it away. He lifted the bundle, slow, careful, like it might shatter. A scrap of paper fluttered loose. "Please keep her safe." That was all. No name, no reason. Just trust left on his doorstep. The baby whimpered once, then went still against his chest. Elias turned, boots sinking into the drift, the storm trying to pull them both back. Inside, he shut the door with his shoulder, dropped the bar across it, and stood breathing hard in the half-dark. He laid the basket by the stove and fed the coals until they glowed red again. The cabin filled with light and smoke, the smell of pine pitch rising. He rubbed his hands, then hesitated. How did one hold a thing that small? He'd built barns, broke horses, buried his own blood. But this was different. He dipped a rag in warm water, wiped snow from her face. She was pale, lashes clumped with frost. He found a tin cup, poured milk, stirred it, then took an old spoon and held it to her lips. She turned her head weakly, then sipped. A sound like a sigh escaped her. Elias watched, motionless. Outside, the wind screamed, battering the shutters. Inside, the only sound was the faint swallowing of a life that refused to quit. When she drifted to sleep, he sat beside the stove, elbows on his knees. The lantern flickered, shadows stretching long across the floorboards. He thought of the graves on the hill, one for his wife, one smaller beside it. The wood markers were nearly covered in snow by now. He hadn't spoken their names in years. The baby stirred again. Her hand slipped free of the quilt, fingers curling toward the heat. He reached out, let one tiny hand wrap around his rough finger. The contact was so light he barely felt it. Yet something inside him shifted, slow as thawing ground. He leaned back, eyes on the fire. "Well," he muttered, voice rough, "guess you're staying the night." No answer but the crackle of pine sap and the storm easing outside. The wind softened, became a hum through the trees. The cabin's air grew still, the silence heavy but clean. Elias covered the child again, adjusted the blanket so no draft could find her. He sat there until the flame shrank low and dawn began to gray the window. Snow still drifted outside, but gentler now. The storm had spent itself. On the floor beside the stove, a single drop of melted ice ran from the basket's edge to the boards. Tiny, glimmering, alive. The baby wouldn't stop crying. Not through the gray morning. Not through the long hours after. Elias rocked her against his chest, hands stiff and awkward, whispering nonsense into the cold cabin air. Her voice was thin but relentless, a sound that found its way into his ribs and stayed there. He tried milk again. She turned her head. Tried warmth by the stove, no use. Her tiny fists beat the air like wings. Elias rubbed the bridge of his nose, breath catching. The walls felt smaller today, the roof lower. Outside, wind scraped through the bare pines, a hollow, lonely sound. He bundled her in the quilt and stepped into the daylight. Snow cracked under his boots. The air stung. He saddled the mare, wrapped the baby tight against his coat, and started toward town. The trail wound through silence, only the creak of leather, the steady thud of hooves, and her faint, broken sobs. He thought of another ride, years ago, his wife clinging to him on the same road, her laugh echoing against the hills. She'd smelled of cedar soap and wild sage. That memory hurt worse than the cold. By the time the first rooftops came into view, his hands were numb. The blacksmith looked up from his anvil, frowning. Two men outside the saloon stared. He felt their eyes, heard the low chuckle. Boone's gone soft. He ignored it, pressed on. The bell over the doctor's door rattled when he entered. Heat hit him like a wave. The doctor wasn't there, but Clara Wynne was. Gray dress, hair tied in a knot, sleeves rolled. She turned, startled at first, then softening when she saw what he carried. "What happened?" she asked quietly. "Found her," Elias said. "On my porch." Clara set aside the kettle, motioned for him to sit. She worked with sure hands, checking the child's pulse, her breath, her skin. "She's hungry," she said. "And cold. But she's strong," Elias nodded once. "I've been trying. I can see that." Her tone was calm, not pitying. She warmed milk, poured it into a small cloth, and let the baby suckle. The crying stopped. The silence that followed felt heavy, almost sacred. Clara smiled faintly. "There, see? You've done well." He looked away. "Didn't feel like it." She wrapped the baby again, careful as if handling glass. "You'll learn. They teach you as they go." Elias met her eyes then, steady, gray-blue like stormlight over water. Something unspoken passed between them, understanding maybe, or the recognition of two people who'd both lost more than they cared to name. He paid for the milk, though she waved him off. Outside, the air had warmed, the snow beginning to melt into slush. The town's noise rose behind him, hammering laughter, gossip carried on the wind. He rode home slower this time. The baby slept against his chest, face hidden beneath the quilt. The sun broke through clouds as he reached the ridge above his ranch. The land spread below, quiet, endless. His cabin stood small but solid in the valley, smoke rising straight for the first time in days. When he stepped inside, the warmth hit him different. The same walls, same stove, yet it didn't feel hollow anymore. He placed the baby in the basket, now lined with old flannel. She stirred once, then went still. He crouched beside her, one hand resting on the wood floor to steady himself. From outside came the sound of melting snow dripping from the eaves, soft, rhythmic, patient. Elias sat there listening. The baby's breathing matched it perfectly, like two small heartbeats learning the same rhythm. He didn't speak, didn't move, just watched the light shift across her face until the room turned gold. The storm was gone, but its memory stayed, a hush that felt almost like peace. The hammering started before dawn, Elias patching the corral fence, breath fogging in the cold air. The baby slept inside, her soft murmurs breaking the silence now and then. Each sound pulled at his ear, kept his rhythm steady. Hammer. Pause. Listen. Hammer again. By mid-morning, dust drifted through the light. The mare flicked her tail lazily, the world quiet except for distant crows. Then came the clatter of wheels, the mail wagon creaking up the trail. Elias straightened, wiping his hands on his trousers. The driver, a young man with sharp eyes, leaned from the seat. "Heard talk down in town," he said. "They say you took in a child." Elias's jaw tightened. "Reckon that's true," the boy smirked. "Ain't yours though, is she?" Elias said nothing, just looked at him long enough that the grin faded. The wagon rattled off, leaving only dust and the echo of laughter. He stood there a while, shoulders set, staring toward the ridge. Beyond it lay the town, its gossip already crawling up the hills. He turned back to the cabin. Inside, the baby reached for him with both hands, small fingers curling into the air. He lifted her, slow, careful. Her skin smelled faintly of milk and wood smoke. "You and me, girl," he muttered. That's all. Later that week, he rode into town for supplies. The street felt tighter than usual, every face turning his way. At the general store, Mrs. Graves gave him a thin smile, but no words. Two men by the stove whispered low. One laughed. Elias caught the phrase, lost his mind, before the door shut behind him. Outside, the preacher stood by the hitching rail, hands folded over a Bible. "Brother Boone," he said, voice smooth as cold water. "The Lord tests us in strange ways. Some burdens are not ours to carry." Elias's hand tightened on the reins. "Maybe, but seems to me she's already here." The preacher's eyes flickered, something like pity passing through. "Children deserve proper homes." Elias looked past him to where Clara Wynne crossed the street, arms full of cloth and bread. She gave him a small nod, steady, unashamed. "She's got one," Elias said quietly. then walked on. Clara found him later by the horse trough. "You shouldn't listen," she said. "I don't." She studied him, sunlight catching the silver in his hair. "You do," she said softly. "But you still stay." "That counts." He didn't answer. Instead, he offered to carry her basket. They walked the long road out of town together, silence stretching between them like an old scar. Halfway home, Clara spoke again. "What will you call her?" He hesitated. "Ain't thought on it. You should. Names make things real." That night after she'd gone, the baby woke crying. Elias carried her to the window. The sky outside was full of stars, cold, endless, bright. He whispered, "Annie," the name rolling rough in his throat. "That sound right to you?" The baby blinked up at him, eyes wide, calm now. He almost smiled. Almost. He sat by the fire till morning, carving a small wooden horse with his knife, its shape uneven but true. When he finished, he set it beside her basket. The cabin smelled of smoke and pine and milk. Outside, dawn broke quiet over the ridge, spilling gold through the frosted glass. Dust motes drifted in the new light, soft, floating, endless. Elias watched one land gently on Annie's cheek and stay there, glimmering like a promise. The first knock came at sundown. Not hurried, just 3 dull raps that barely carried through the wind. Elias paused mid-motion, knife stilling over a strip of pine. The baby, Annie, slept in her basket by the stove, curls damp with heat. The evening smelled of stew and wood smoke. He waited, breath held. The knock came again. He opened the door slow. A woman stood there, thin as fence wire, wrapped in a torn shawl. Dust clung to her face. Her boots were ruined. Behind her, the sky bled orange into blue. "Elias Boone?" Her voice cracked like an old hinge. He nodded once. She swayed where she stood. "You've got her," she said. "The baby." Elias didn't speak. Didn't move. Her eyes searched his face, desperate. "She's alive, ain't she?" He stepped aside. "Come in." She crossed the threshold, clutching her arms around herself. When she saw Annie in the basket, her knees buckled. She dropped to the floor, sobbing without sound. Elias stood near the table, hands gripping the back of a chair. "You the mother?" "No." Her voice came small. "Friend, Ruth called her." "Her mama, she didn't make it. Died after birth. I was supposed to take the child to town, but the storm came." "I couldn't go on." The flames in the stove snapped, throwing gold across her face. She looked like someone half buried and still digging for breath. "I left her," she whispered, "on your porch. I thought maybe God would forgive me if she lived." Elias's throat worked. He looked at the child, then back at Ruth. She did. The woman pressed a hand to her mouth, shaking. Clara's voice broke the silence from the doorway, soft, measured. "Let her sit, Eli." He hadn't heard Clara come in. She'd brought more herbs, more milk. Her presence filled the room like calm water over fire. She knelt beside Ruth, guiding her to a chair. Ruth drew a small locket from her dress, hands trembling. "Her name's Annie," she said. Her mama wanted her to have this. Elias took it carefully. The metal was cold, the engraving faint. AM inside, a wisp of hair tied with thread. He turned it over once, twice, then set it by the cradle. "She's got a home now," he said quietly. Ruth nodded, tears shining in the lamplight. "I just needed to see her safe. Then I'll go." Clara brought her bread, poured coffee. The 3 of them sat in silence while the baby's soft breathing filled the gaps between words. When the woman left the next morning, the snow had melted down to mud. Elias watched her vanish down the road, shawl flapping like a broken wing. Clara lingered by the porch rail. "You'll keep the locket?" she asked. He nodded. "She's earned it." Clara's gaze drifted to the hills. "We all earn our ghosts, I suppose." He looked at her, then at the horizon. Some ghosts stay longer than they ought. That night he carved again by the fire, shaping wood into something small, a cradle's leg smooth and strong. Annie slept beside him, the locket gleaming faintly on her blanket. Outside, coyotes called across the valley, thin voices fading into distance. Elias listened, shoulders easing, hands steady. When he finished sanding the cradle piece, he placed it on the table and looked out the window. The last of the day's light caught on the snowmelt, turning it to thin rivers of gold running down the slope. For the first time in years, the reflection on the glass wasn't of a man alone, but of 2. one strong enough to stay, one small enough to make staying mean something. Autumn came quiet. The hills turned gold, and the air carried the dry whisper of wheat against wind. Elias stacked firewood by the porch, sleeves rolled, sweat darkening his collar. Annie played in the dirt nearby, chasing sunlight with her hands. She laughed, a small, bright sound that didn't belong to this hard land, but somehow made it softer. He watched her a long while, the axe still in his grip. Each swing of wood brought memory. His wife's voice, the stillness of the graves on the hill, the empty winters that followed. Now that silence felt far away, like something buried deep under thawed ground. "Eli," Clara's voice called from the porch. She stepped down, basket in hand, skirt brushing the dry grass. "You're wearing her out." "She's wearing me out," he said, half a smile ghosting across his face. Clara knelt beside the child, brushing curls from Annie's forehead. "She needs a hat," she murmured. "Sun's fierce today," Elias nodded. "You'll have to sew one." "I don't know how." Her eyes lifted to his, soft, steady. "You've learned everything else." The wind rose between them, carrying the faint scent of pine and old rain. For a moment, neither spoke. The air held something unspoken, fragile as breath. Later at supper, Clara set bread on the table and poured milk into Annie's tin cup. The child tried to drink and missed, milk running down her chin. Elias laughed low, surprised by his own sound. Clara joined in, and for the first time in years, the cabin echoed with something other than wind. As dusk settled, they sat outside. The horizon burned orange, the sun sliding behind the ridge. Elias held Annie on his knee, her small hands gripping his shirt. Clara sat nearby, mending one of his shirts by lantern light. "She'll walk soon," Clara said. "She already does," he replied. "When I ain't looking, she'll run then, and talk your ear off." He glanced down at Annie. "Long as she don't say goodbye too soon." Clara looked at him then, really looked. "You're not the kind men leave things behind, Elias Boone." He didn't answer. Didn't need to. The words hung between them like quiet understanding. When the baby fell asleep, he carried her inside. The cradle he'd built gleamed in the lamplight, sanded smooth, steady as the man who made it. He laid her down, the locket resting on her chest. The faint click of it closing was the only sound in the room. Outside, night gathered slow. The wind sighed through the grass, soft as a prayer. Clara lingered at the doorway. "You'll be all right?" she asked. Elias nodded. "We will," she smiled, small and true. "Good night, Eli." "Good night, Clara." The door shut. The latch settled. The cabin breathed. He sat by the fire a while, hands wrapped around his coffee cup, listening to the world beyond the walls, the creak of the rafters, the rustle of the stove, the faint, steady breathing of the child. Each sound was proof of something still alive. He rose, walked to the window. Outside, the field swayed under moonlight, silver dust lifting with each gust. He thought of the note that had come with her. Please, keep her safe. He had done that, and more. He turned back to the cradle. Annie shifted in her sleep, one small hand stretching open, palm upward, as if reaching for something unseen. Elias reached too, his calloused hand hovering above hers before settling gently over it. The fire popped once, then quiet. Beyond the window, the wind carried the scent of harvest and wood smoke, brushing against the glass like memory. The night deepened, and in its hush, Elias whispered, not a prayer, not a promise, but something simpler. "You're my family now." Outside, the lantern's light flickered once, then steadied, its glow warm against the cold that used to live here.